But it's basically, the right of tribal nations to govern themselves and to care for themselves and to determine their futures in the best interest of themselves. And it's very much aligned with the recommendations that do I call you Doctor Aki, Professor Randall had in his essay, where we say, look, everyone, localism is determinative. I hate that phrase, but it's basically like if you on the ground understand your needs and priorities best, you tribe understand your culture, your needs, your history, your people the best. And so you're most empowered to understand what your needs are. And so it's, at a very baseline level, it's basically like a respect for a government unit to determine the needs and priorities of its constituents and its citizens. And in terms of data sovereignty, and that's the sticky part, it's kind of the same thing, but in terms of data, that tribes have the sovereign authority to control the data that is unique to them, that is based on their unique situation and their unique culture, background, histories, and that's not something that can be extracted without their consent, that can be used without their knowledge or consent, and that much like in other contexts, that is evolving. Consent can be retracted, it can be limited, it can be defined. And so what we see in terms of, because we're very like pro wanting to engage with tribal nations, it's hard to keep that in check because everyone's like, oh, well, we want to do all this stuff. So we need all this data and we need to know how many members you have and we need to know your socioeconomic status and we need to know like how much like of the guaranteed income you have. I'm like reframing my brain now because of this presentation, but like, so what do you have and tell us everything about you. And the first thing that goes through my mind as a Native person is like, like, who's going to use that against us? Because we're in a friendly administration-ish now, but when it turns, you see where that's happened, where that's been in a negative way for us, where people, if they know you're Native, they know, and they know your socioeconomic status, and they think about, termination policies, they think about assimilation policies, they think about all sorts of other things. So in our administration, we try to, and again, it's like herding cats a bit because there's a lot of well-intentioned excitement with engaging with tribes. We try to make sure that folks understand that, like, if a tribe gives you data, it's not yours, and that it's based on an understanding of how you framed the question, and that to be more precise, you need to put things in writing. You need to explain what the data is going to be used for and understand what the tribe's understanding is of what you're going to do with it, because there is that lack of trust, and especially at the state where, the state's responsible for the wholesale genocide of California Native people. That's where you're coming from when you're asking for more information. It's like, we've got to like level set. We've got to make sure that we're having those boundaries so that people aren't coming to these tables and saying, here's something, and you're saying you're here to help, but then all my data is all over the internet and everybody, knows everything about, my tribal chairman and where his like income sources are from. So that was a bit of a rambling answer on tribal data sovereignty, but it's something that we try to be very careful of because it is like, from a government perspective, trust building, it's like you basically got to like knock everything out and start from the beginning, and you've got to make sure that the things that you do are solid. And you saw during the CARES funding, that fiasco that happened with data control, where, yeah, it's a great thing that we get more funding, but is it a great thing that everybody now has our proprietary information? Like, that's nuts. So I'll leave it there.